Thanks for joining us for What's Going On with SAM.gov, an updated transition overview. I'm Shannon Clancy, Great Falls PTAC advisor, and I'm able to provide free assistance that will help make the process of contracting with the government a little easier for you. Montana PTAC is made possible by Big Sky Economic Development and its partner organizations across the state. This Procurement Technical Assistance Center is hosted by the Great Falls Development Authority and funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the Defense Logistics Agency. Please note that this is not a tutorial of how to complete the full SAM.gov registration process. So without further ado, let's get started. Our agenda in this hour will be to recap the April 4th transition, go over some of the validation pain points, provide a list of documents required to support entity information and upload formats, take a deeper dive into the new validation process, how it works, and why the changes, how new registrations and renewals have been affected by the transition, what progress is being made to improve and resolve current issues, and a brief FAQ session. To recap the transition of April 4th, the DUNS number has been removed from all federal databases. The Unique Entity ID, also known as the UEI-SAM, is now the authoritative identifier. Active and inactive registrations prior to April 4th were assigned a UEI-SAM and viewable within your SAM.gov record. You are able to receive a UEI-SAM number without completing the registration process. And Ernst & Young is now the validation service provider selected by GSA. Some ongoing pain points of the validation process have been for entities whose information is already correct in SAM.gov, yet they are required to complete the new validation process in order to complete an update or renewal. Those completing a new registration or just need a UEI-SAM are also required to complete the new validation process. If you enter the entity's legal business name and physical address, the system seldom generates a match for your entity, and you are required to create an incident, which is basically a help ticket directly from SAM.gov, and attach documents required to prove the information you have entered is correct. The entity validation process goes through SAM.gov only. If you create an incident in FSD.gov regarding a validation issue, it will be rejected and you will be prompted to return to SAM.gov validation process to create an incident. It's unclear how the new validation system is generating the match found list. However, once an incident has been created in SAM.gov, the help tickets are reviewed in the order they are received. There's an overwhelming number of entities whose information isn't generating correctly within this new system. Therefore, they are required to create an incident. And as a result, the review times can take weeks, and there is no way to speed up the process at this time. So why the changes? The transition has been a federal government-wide initiative with the OMB directing federal agencies to complete their own transition process. SAM.gov verifies that there are no duplicated registrations within their system that match the legal business name and physical address of the entity being registered. GSA has been under pressure to move away from an exclusive entity validation system, and as a solution, they opened the competition for an alternative to eliminate a third-party company and just have a validation service that would complete the process entirely within SAM.gov. The idea was that GSA's decision would create predictability for the cost of the entity validation services. This would introduce competitiveness that would improve the government's ability to manage data on behalf of the entire government moving forward. When validating your legal business name, you are prompted to create an incident for entity validation purposes. You will be required to attach one or more documents that prove your entity's legal business name, physical address, and date of incorporation. Here is a list of approved documents that can be used to verify your entity's information. A list of approved documents to validate your entity's physical address include a utility bill, bank statement, IRS validation page, and/or a tax return. Tax returns and bank statements should be redacted to reveal limited information prior to upload, and a Word document is not an acceptable format. Some helpful upload tips would be to save the document for easy access to drag into the incident you're creating, and use all lowercase letters when naming your files. Be prepared for the registration process. The purpose of registration will determine what sections of the registration must be completed. If you want to obtain federal contract awards and grants, you must complete all 4 sections of the registration to include core data, assertions, reps and certs, and points of contact. If you are only interested in federal assistance opportunities, such as grants and loans only, you must complete 3 sections of the registration to include core data, reps and certs, and points of contact. To complete the registration process, you will need your entity details, taxpayer information, and banking information. How does the new validation process work? To get started, go to sam.gov homepage where you can sign in to an existing account, or click Get Started to begin the process of creating a new account. Click through the 4 steps and review each one to ensure you are prepared to complete the process. If you do not have a login.gov account, click the Sign In button displayed in step 2 and create one. Login.gov is a sign-in service used by the public to securely access government platforms such as sam.gov. Here you can sign in or create a new account. It's recommended that you only add 1 email address to your login.gov account to avoid sign-in failures within other federal databases such as sam.gov. The email and password you use to create your login.gov account can be used for any federal platform that uses login.gov as their sign-in service. If you've created a login.gov account, this doesn't mean that you have registered in sam.gov. By creating this account, you're able to sign into sam.gov and access your workspace. You will need to proceed with the Get Started process to register an entity or request a UEI SAM. If you are signing into sam.gov with an existing account or logging in for the first time, enter the email address and password that you use to create your login.gov account and click Sign In. You will receive a one-time security code via the authentication method you chose when you created your login.gov account. Enter your code here and click Submit. You will then be prompted to click the Accept button to continue. You've successfully logged into your workspace. Here, you can click on Entities or the number within the active registration bubble to display active registrations that are linked to your workspace. If this is your first time accessing your workspace, it's important to note that your workspace will display all zeros unless you have registered a new entity or have linked an existing one through the process of appointing an administrator. Active and inactive registrations will appear within your workspace. Here, you are able to select what you would like to do by clicking the 3-dot widget, which will display a drop box with the following actions. View record, where you can see details of the SAM registration. Update, where you can begin a renewal or update information. Or view in hierarchy, which is a directory typically used by federal agencies for managing purposes. For those of you new to the validation process or new to sam.gov, it's important to note that if there is an existing registration within your workspace, the date of incorporation can be located within the entity SAM record by clicking View Record from the three-dot widget and scrolling down to the Entity Start Date section. If you're unsure of the entity start date, it may be helpful to go to the Montana Secretary of State website to complete a business search of your entity, where the registration date displayed is typically the date the entity started. There have been instances where SAM.gov and the Montana Secretary of State are not consistent with the entity start date, so it's recommended to try both years when completing the date of incorporation section. If you are completing a new registration for government contracting and grants, or for grants only, you will opt to the full registration path by clicking Register Entity, and your entity will be assigned a UEI SAM automatically as part of the process. If you only need a UEI SAM, click the Get Unique Entity ID path. And if you're already registered in SAM, regardless if your entity is active or inactive, you've already been assigned a UEI SAM, which can be viewed within your SAM record. Enter the purpose of your registration. This includes the type of entity you're registering and the reason you're registering to do business with the federal government. Your entity may be a business or organization, and you want to be able to bid on federal contracts as well as apply for grants. Then you will choose the first path. If you're applying for state, local, or federal grants only, then you will choose the second path. If you have an existing registration, you are given the opportunity to update the points of contact information immediately. However, this will not renew your registration. To renew or update your SAM record, you will need to select the I would like to update, renew option and click Next. Here you are given an opportunity to change the purpose of the registration. As you can see in this screenshot, the purpose of the registration is for federal assistance awards only. But if you decide that you would like to bid on federal contracts as well, then you may change your purpose by clicking Yes, or keep the choice by selecting No. Enter the legal business name and address of your entity. It is recommended that the legal business name and address match what has been entered into the Montana Secretary of State. If you are a sole proprietor, you are not obligated to register with the Secretary of State. However, it is recommended that you be consistent with all documentation that reflects the legal business name and address of your entity. After entering your entity information, the system will provide this pop-up screen while it populates the matches found list. The information you entered on the Validate Entity page will appear here. The system has generated a list of possible matches to choose from. If your entity appears in the Found the Following Match box, click Next. If you highlighted the bubble indicating that your entity information is correct, then you will proceed with the validation process and be required to enter the date of incorporation. Select the state and click Next. Please note that if the Next button remains gray, you will need to double check the information entered, or you will not be able to proceed until the Next button is green. It is recommended that you check the public search box. By unchecking this box, your entity will have a restrictive status and will not be viewable within the SAM.gov database. This can be an issue if you are working with an agency to contract with the government, or if you are currently applying for local, state, or federal assistance, where checking this box is a requirement. If you have inadvertently unchecked this box, a SAM registration update will be required to change the status. If you are authorized to conduct transactions on behalf of the entity, check the box to certify and then click the Receive Unique Entity ID button. You have received your UEI SAM. and are now given the opportunity to proceed with the registration process or be done. If you click the Done button, you will return to your workspace. If you did not see a match that is exactly the same as your entity, highlight the bubble indicating that your information is not correct and click the Create Incident button to begin the process. If you feel that you have entered information incorrectly, you may start the process over by clicking the Start Over button. Upload the appropriate documents that will validate your entity's legal business name and physical address. Next, fully describe the issue in the text box provided and click Submit. What happens next? After submitting your incident, you will be redirected back to the workspace. Find the entity in your workspace by clicking on the number displayed inside the Pending ID assignment bubble. Select the FSD incident link, and then click the View button to check the status. If you receive a request for additional documentation from SAM.gov, click on the FSD incident link to display the supporting documentation box where you can upload the requested documentation. Shortly after you have submitted an incident, you will receive an email from GSA with your incident number and confirming an incident has been opened on your behalf. If you would like to view the incident, click on the Take Me to the Incident link. Nonprofit and for-profit entities that are active in SAM.gov and have submitted an incident for validation purposes, regardless if they are registering to bid on federal contracts and grants, or if they are registering for grants only, may receive an email from SAM.gov indicating they have been granted a one-time 30-day extension. This will allow additional time for staff to review the help ticket and will add 30 days to the entity's expiration date, and no further action is required. If you have an open help ticket, you may receive an email from GSA that reads, "Your incident has been resolved," added in the subject line, followed up by an email that reads, "Comments added," in the subject line. This email confirms that they have used the data you provided them to perform a search in their database, and they have found a potential match. If the entity details are displayed correctly, then you will be able to log into your SAM.gov workspace to move forward with completing a renewal or new registration or request a UEI SAM. If the information provided is inaccurate, click Reply and enter the correct entity details by following the same structure that is within the email so they can update or add your entity correctly within the database. Once you have replied to the email with your correct entity information, you may have to monitor your emails or log into your SAM.gov workspace periodically and attempt to see if the system has generated an exact match from the matches found list. If the system generates an exact match, you may proceed. If not, additional time may be needed. If you have successfully completed the validation process, you will be presented with a core data screen to proceed with the registration. Since the April 4th transition, renewals and new registrations have been taking longer than expected. If you have questions or concerns with the registration process or the status of a new submission, you may want to connect with your PTAC for assistance. Some validation process recommendations would be to always include the required documentation with your created incident. Any tickets submitted without documentation will be closed and you will be required to repeat the process. Create only one incident per entity validation and receive a ticket number. SAM.gov represents that creating multiple incidents for the same issue actually slows down the overall process. And do not attach documents or create an incident for validation purposes through FSD.gov. Create incidents for validation purposes through SAM.gov only. And if additional documentation is required, you will be notified via email from sam.gov. Progress to improve and resolve issues is ongoing. However, most recently, sam.gov has been communicating through email notifications regarding validation help tickets. 30-day extensions are being implemented for sam.gov users to provide staff additional time to address help tickets, and sam.gov has provided the user an opportunity to reply with their correct entity information. Finally, the help page has been upgraded based on feedback GSA has received from users just like you. This improved help page provides additional options to choose from, such as the search tab, which is the primary means of finding articles and guides, the Explore tab, which provides a menu of topics, and the Go to FSD.gov tab that provides help with your sam.gov account. Here are some frequently asked questions. Will entities still be required to register with Dun & Bradstreet in order to register in sam.gov? No. Some agencies may require a DUNS number. However, DUNS numbers are no longer used within sam.gov. If you already have a DUNS number, it will never expire and it will remain linked to your business even if your business is inactive. Do I need to update my entity registration and go through the new validation process right now? No, this would only be necessary if you're scheduled to expire. Do I need to create an incident if my legal business name and/or physical address has changed? Yes, you will need to create an incident and complete the process. Why can't I access an entity's public data? For any user to search or view entity registration data, you must be logged into your sam.gov workspace. There are no roles required to view public data. However, the entity must have checked the public search box during the registration process to be visible as previously discussed. And finally, can I still search for help at fsd.gov? Yes. The Federal Service Desk at fsd.gov remains an active help resource regarding sam.gov issues. However, FSD is unable to assist with any entity validation issues. If you would like access to our trainings and materials, please go to our website at growgreatfallsmontana.org under the Government Contracting tab and allow a few days for recent events to post. We would like to thank you for joining us and look forward to assisting you in the future.